Good morning, and no, it's not Jackie. It's Chris Waddell reading the Neepawa Press for January 25th, 2017, and our welcome to all our viewers and listeners on NAC TV and across the nation and locally. Welcome. Neepawa Press, the issue of Deer. The title, Oh Dear, Town Divided Over Visitors, by Kate Jackman Atkinson. Each night as dusk falls, Neepawa sees its population grow, but not everyone is happy about the visitors. For the last month, the town has become a popular hangout for deer who feast on trees and shrubs and birdseed. Starting early this month, residents at the edge of town began noticing deer visiting their yards. Now, though, they are being seen throughout the town, including major thoroughfares. At dusk on January 13th, one area resident saw 3 deer traveling west on Hamilton, crossing Mountain Avenue on a green light. Another resident saw 1 deer go from the alley at the Vivian Hotel down Hamilton Street to First Avenue, where it waited for a second one. The pair then ran north through the yard between St. Dominic's Catholic Church and Knox Presbyterian Church. According to Manitoba Sustainable Development, formerly conservation, the cold and heavy snow experienced this month hampers animals' ability to find food and escape predators. These conditions can drive them into town where there are food sources as well as cleared roadways and fewer predators. The deer appear to be drawn to town and are especially fond of cedars. Their eating habits are causing anger and frustration on the part of homeowners anxious to protect their properties. Lauren Wahosky, who lives at the north end of town by the hospital, said the deer, which usually come in herds of 14 or more at a time, are getting to be a problem. He has counted 22 in his yard at once, eating his 15-foot-high cedars. Despite them being wrapped, they're destroying everything, he said. Besides his trees, Wahosky is concerned about the feces the deer are leaving behind on the lawn where his grandchildren play. It's terrible. It's not appropriate, he explained. Wahosky has tried contacting Manitoba Sustainable Development about the situation, but despite being routed to 3 different offices, has yet to get a response about his options. We're not a game refuge, he said. Some, though, like Valerie Wilson, who lives near the former CN property, enjoyed seeing the deer. Let's enjoy these deer in town, she said, adding, I've seen elk in Jasper and deer in Waterton Lakes. It is not something that would ever bother me. The deer arrived in her yard most nights about 8 p.m., between 8 p.m. and midnight, and have been eating the trees as well as the birdseed she puts out for the birds. While the deer have caused some destruction of the town's vegetation so far, that's the extent of the damage. Spruce Plains RCMP's acting staff sergeant Mark Moorhouse said they haven't yet been called to any accidents or incidents involving the deer. Whose problem the deer are seems to be unclear. Neepawa CAO Colleen Sinchishin said that council has discussed the issue briefly. It's on their radar, she said. At this point, she explained there's little the town can do. It's illegal to discharge firearms in town, and baiting or feeding the deer requires permission from Sustainable Development and a very careful consideration of potential unintended consequences. We recognize it's an issue, she said. A spokesperson for Manitoba Sustainable Development explained their concern was providing feeding location outside of town. The province absolutely does not support feeding wildlife. If it is dangerous and often more harmful to them for a variety of reasons, he explained. According to a spokesperson for Sustainable Development, conservation officers do their best to limit any dangerous animal-human conflict, but may not be able to devote time to chasing deer out of a populated area. He added that if any animal is injured or becomes a threat to people or the community, officers have a variety of options at their disposal. And the photographs one is by Gene Seaborn, a nice 6-point buck, maybe more than 6, very nice buck. and Alan Gillies posted his picture of 2 deer that are part of a group of 3 seen at the south end of town. So thank you to Jean and Alan for providing those photographs. We'll take a look at Cecil Pittman's Looking Back, and he goes all the way back to 1937, 80 years ago. Neepawa Collegiate blanks Brandon with the collegiate hockey's best swamped their Brandon Ace opponents in a feverish game here Monday night at the rink. Both teams missed numerous chances to register. The score was 4-0. Pearl Tomlin initiated the scoring within 2 minutes, the first on a pass from George Vivian and the second from a face-off to the left of Brandon net. The valiant efforts of the visitors to make a marker in the next period were fruitless. At 3 minutes, Tomlin split the defense, giving Jack Thompson a chance to bang one past Snyder. The final period was charged with dynamite. Many penalties were handed out. Bill Gwynn made a getaway from the crowd, fooled the defense, and tallied the last counter. M. Tomlin and James Harper handled the game efficiently. And 40 years ago, January 27th, 77, Rivers Pipe Band brought along their dancers to a Robbie Burns night in Neepawa, and their light, quick steps were a treat to watch. The dance is an annual event sponsored by the Neepawa Rotary Club. And I may come back to that a little later. We'll see how time goes. There is a lovely photograph from the archives, Cecil Pittman's personal archives, the J.A. Clare's store on the corner of Mountain Avenue and Hamilton, which is now the location of Neepawa Shop Easy. I may hopefully have time to come back to that later. There's some material on the opinions page, one from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, CTF, and another from a letter to the editor, and I can't see who that one's from. Oh, and a little bit more from CTF, so that'll be about taxes. We'll see if we have time for that a little later. I always enjoyed Tundra, the cartoon. See if I can get it on the screen here. Flip back up. There we are. A hunter. Oh, the more wildlife. Hunter says, using his duck call, and it says, and the duck responds and says, "How many times have I told you not to call me at work?" That's a Canadian cartoonist that we publish. And thumbs up, thumbs down. This week we had one from Inakamak. Thumbs up to all the businesses who keep their sidewalks clean. It sure makes it a lot easier and safer for our more mature and not so mobile customers to come in to our establishments. And the press encourages thumbs up and thumbs down. We'll read an article here by Owen Devereaux regarding Premier Pallister's visit to Neepawa last week. Pallister vows not to forget about rural Manitoba. Much like a long-haul truck driver, Brian Pallister has recently seen a large swath of the provincial highway in a very short amount of time. Last week, Manitoba's Premier traveled nearly 1,300 kilometers to attend several events across the Westman region. The itinerary included a pair of tributes for retiring MLAs, one in Neepawa for Stu Brees and the other in Shoal Lake for Leanne Rowett. As well, he participated in meetings in Swan River, Dauphin, Verdun, Brandon, and Portage la Prairie over the span of 3 days. During an interview with the press during his stop in Neepawa, Pallister noted this effort to meet with Manitobans outside the perimeter began well before he became premier. I started this when I became opposition leader. It's something that has to be a big part of my commitment as party leader and now as premier. For too long, there's been too much of a demonstration of concern on issues central to Winnipeg. That's understandable, as the majority of the population resides in the city. I get that, to some degree, said Pallister. However, that creates a sense of isolation, a feeling of being forgotten, being taken for granted. I don't want people to feel that that's where their government thinks of them. Our stance is to ensure rural Manitoba, communities within rural Manitoba, and their issues are part of the conversation. As part of that conversation, Pallister outlined the challenges the current government continues to face when it comes to being fiscally responsible, while also meeting its required spending commitments. He spoke of the need of a cautious approach to lowering the current deficit and downsizing government. On top of outlining his views on the future, Pallister talked to those in attendance about what actually concerns them directly. He said in each community there seem to be a few similar issues brought forward. There are 3 major issues that have come up. One would be health care. There are concerns about the federal government's position in respect to reducing of support for health care. So that's heightened in rural Manitoba because there are challenges throughout the system, but there are some greater ones in evidence in rural Manitoba. I don't think a lot of people understand until they come to the communities and speak to the people. For example, in Swan River, pediatrics are a concern. Expectant mothers have, in the past, had to travel to Yorkton or Dauphin for care. That's a real issue, stated Pallister. There are concerns as well in connection to where we are going as a country on the carbon tax issue. That's been in the minds of a lot of rural Manitobans because it is, of course, an issue that impacts agriculture significantly, which is a key contributor to our economy and a major source of jobs. In a couple of my meetings, the issues of night hunting has also been brought up. Some are worried about overhunting and fair hunting practices, so that's something that comes up. We've stepped up our enforcement and the seizing of vehicles. Ultimately, we have to work together to create a change in attitude because policing that issue, it's really not feasible. The number of issues has doubled, I believe, from last year. We've got to work on that, and I think we have some solutions that'll move us in the right direction on those issues. And a photograph of Premier Pallister, who speaks during Stu Breese's retirement event in Neepawa on Monday, January 16th. And an article by Kate Jackman Atkinson, Smart Device Donations to Help Students in Guatemala. When retired teacher Ron Nordstrom heads to Guatemala next month, he's hoping to have more than just books in his suitcase. Nordstrom of Neepawa is taking part in a Rotary teaching exchange and will be spending a month at the Joya Verde School in Guatemala, helping to train and support the school's teachers. The trip is sponsored by Rotary District 5550, which covers northwestern Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, and will involve 6 teachers. Each participant brings their expertise, and for Nordstrom, one of his is technology. To this end, he is hoping to gather unused smart devices which can be loaded with free apps and educational software to give to the school for students to use. While the school has no internet, he explained, that are needed, software can be loaded before or by using a Wi-Fi connection while there. Nordstrom explained that even obsolete devices such as an old iPhone 3 he has are helpful. While some of the apps will need to be loaded onto the devices, Nordstrom explained that the phones themselves have tools that are very useful in learning environment. One example is cameras, which the students can use to help build their storytelling skills. He added that apps geared toward math and reading skills, as well as generic programs for tasks such as word processing and presentations, will also be loaded onto the devices. Nordstrom is looking for any smart devices, such as phones or tablets, but not laptops or desktop computers, which are too bulky. He would prefer if the donor can wipe their information off the devices before donation, but for anyone who doesn't know how, he will do this before preparing the phones for Guatemala. Phones can be dropped off at Arts Forward, the Viscount Cultural Center, or by contacting Nordstrom at rnord, R-N-O-R-D, at mymts.net to make arrangements. I'll go back to Rick Sparling's article on where are the Bantam Double B provincial champions now. After I've read some local current news, our Neepawa farmers make it 10 in a row by Owen Devereaux, and a good action shot by Owen, a 5-point night for Matt Lowry in white helped to push the Neepawa farmers toward a 10-3 victory over the Pilot Mound Pilots on Saturday, January 21st. And his article describes the game. A 5-point effort, 2 goals, 3 assists from Matt Lowry helped to pace the Neepawa farmers to a dominant 10-3 victory over the Pilot Mound Pilots on Saturday, January 21st. Exceptional performances from Hayden Colasar and Ward Susky, 1 goal and 2 assists each, also were a big part of the farmers' strong performance in their final home game of the Tiger Hills Hockey League regular season. This was Neepawa's 10th straight win and improved their record to a 12-4-0, while Pilot Mound dropped to 1-14-2. During the game, Lowry opened up the scoring with a solid physical effort as he swept in off the Pilot Mound goaltender's left side and slipped the puck past the keeper. A few minutes later, Ward Susky scored a similar goal off the same side of the ice. Before the end of the first, the Pilots would answer back with one of their own to make it 2-1 at the first intermission. In the second, Neepawa opened up the offense with 4 unanswered goals. First, Cam Tibbett collected one off of a shot that seemed to be on a string to the back of the net, making it 3-1. That was quickly followed up with Lowry's second goal of the night from what appeared to be a tip on Tibbett's shot. Then at the 13:44 mark of the second, Tyler Fenning-Cox scored off of a bullet of a shot from the blue line to make it 5-1 before the second intermission. Lance Nugent added one more to make it 6-1 for the Farmers heading into the final 20 minutes of regulation. Early in the final frame, Pilot Mound pushed aggressively to get back into contention. That effort paid off with a pair of quick goals to cut the deficit to 3. That seemed to wake up Neepawa as they responded with the final 4 goals of the night for a 10-3 victory. Riley Colasar, Ward Susky, and a pair from Hayden Colasar closed out the evening for the home side. With the win, Neepawa remains tied for first place in the Eastern Division with the Minnedosa Bombers with the identical 12-4-0 records. The Farmers will have to deal with a difficult challenge to close out the regular season as they play a pair of games on the road next weekend. First in McGregor to play the Wild, which sits at 5-10-1 on Friday the 27th, and the following night, Killarney to take on the Shamrocks, who are sitting at 15-0-0 in the final game of the regular season. Neepawa natives in review. They were shut out by Dauphin on January 20th, 6-0. Shots on goal by the Dauphin Kings was 26. Neepawa natives had lots of effort. They had 28 shots on goal. And on Saturday Saturday at Wayway-Sakapo, they lost 5-2 to Wayway-Sakapo Wolverines, and again they matched them in shots. They had 34 shots on goal and the Wolverines had 37. The next game is coming right up, and there will be more coverage of the game in the Neepawa banner this Friday. I'm going to go back to the rattling and the extra pages is because we are working off of proof pages rather than waiting for the paper to come in from the printers. I'm going back to Rick Sparling's articles on, and Rick Sparling was raised in Neepawa and has written a lot and has a book on hockey in Neepawa and the province. And his question is, where are they now? Bantam Double B provincial champions of 1954-55, and he's done a lot of tracking to find where these people are. Wes McCammon received his teacher's certificate from the Winnipeg Normal School and later received his master's in education at the University of British Columbia. He taught at Central School and was principal at West Park School. He initiated the public school hockey program, which ran from 1938 until 1962. Wes also taught at Manitoba Teachers College and the Faculty of Education at the University of Manitoba. Wes loved music, belonged to the Shriners and the Neepawa Lions Club. Most notably, Wes was heavily involved in coaching and managing minor baseball and hockey. He passed away in 2005 at the age of 94. Gary Campbell graduated from Neepawa Collegiate in 1958 and went to Brandon College, where he played quarterback for the college football team. He left there in 61 for Thompson, Manitoba, to work for Inco in their sample lab. He married Beverly Anderson in 1965, and they stayed in Thompson until 1968 and moved to Brandon. Gary finished his college and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree and a silver medal in scholastics. He became the vice principal in Hamiota for 5 years. Gary and Beverly had 2 children, Callie and Karma, and have 4 grandchildren. Gary excelled at sports, and one of his favorite pastimes was watching NHL hockey. He passed away in 1979. Lawrence Cathcart, Tubby, I'll add that, has spent his entire life in the Neepawa area in the farming industry. He played hockey, coached, and refereed for many years. He married Gail Montgomery 55 years ago, and they are proud parents of 4 sons, Scott, Kevin, Derek, and Miles, and have 14 grandkids and 3 great-grandkids. His interests are in his family, hunting, fishing, watching hockey, and reading. Lawrence was one of the founding members of the Neepawa Natives Junior Hockey Club when they arrived in Neepawa in 1989. Wilf Jackson worked on him as a mechanic at McDougall's Garage and played hockey for the intermediates until he married Fern Winthrop in 1961, at which time they moved to Duncan, BC. Wilf was self-employed. Fern passed away tragically in 1984. They have 3 children, and Wilf has 5 grandchildren. He played old-timers hockey from 1976 until 1992 with a team out of Campbell River. Wilf has spent his last 24 winters in Parker Dam, California. He retired in 2014. Russ Cathcart left school and went into Winnipeg as an apprentice meat cutter for Safeway in 1957. He then ventured north to Churchill, Manitoba, where he worked in the commissary for the military in their meat department. He was there for about 5 years and met and married Joyce Parrott from Carmen, Manitoba. They had 3 girls and he has 2 grandchildren. He was transferred to CFB Shiloh and then he worked for Safeway in Brandon. Then on to Verdun, where he was self-employed, and next went to Cooperative Development in Grand Rapids, where he managed the store. He went from there to Safeway in Thompson, and finally to Duncan, British Columbia, working for Superstores in 1976. He finished his career at Quality Foods as a meat cutter and retired in 2002. Russ's hobbies is simple R&R, and after all that travel, who could blame him? Dennis Bent left Neepawa in 1960 and started working for Anglo-Canada in Portage la Prairie, driving bulk fuel to farmers in the area. He stayed on there for 7 years and moved to Red Deer, Alberta, and drove for Alpha Dairies. Dennis moved to Calgary in 1969 and spent 36 years as owner-operator for Cascade Carriers and retired from them in 2005. He married Laurel Park and has 4 children and 6 grandchildren. Dennis keeps busy attending various car shows around Calgary and does a little golfing. The Bents reside in Calgary. Doug Forsman went directly out of school into Murray's Garage as an apprentice mechanic in 1957 and worked there until the doors closed in 2008. Doug moved on to McLaughlin's, who bought Murray's out and worked there for 6 more years until he retired in 2014, totaling 57 years. He advanced along the way to service manager in 1975 and then into sales later on. Doug married Jean McClellan from Durban, and they have 2 children and 6 grandchildren and 2 great-grandkids. Doug was a volunteer firefighter for 20 years and enjoyed many years of playing hockey in the commercial league, and ended his hockey playing with the 39ers Old Timers hockey team and has interest in the internet and golfing. He has belonged to the Kinsman Club and the Lions Club. The Forsmans live in Neepawa. Doug Levanek moved to Winnipeg in 1960 and worked for Scott National, a wholesale food company which was part of Burns. Doug was transferred to Dryden, Ontario, and managed the division until his retirement in 1998. He married Beverly Zinger and had 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Doug enjoys the outdoor life, camping, hunting, and fishing, and the Levaneks live in Dryden still. Ron McLaren went to the University of Manitoba and then on to Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado, receiving a doctorate in animal nutrition. He worked as provincial nutritionist upon returning to Manitoba in 1971, then worked at Feedright until his retirement. Ron married Bernice Buksevich, who passed away in 1996. They had 3 sons, Sean, Kurt, and Brett. He was remarried to Zita Allard and has resided in the Fort Richmond area of Winnipeg. When he was able, he enjoyed team penning, fishing, hunting, and socializing with family and friends. Bernard Holod moved from Neepawa to Portage la Prairie when he was 14 after leaving high school. And after leaving high school, he worked for Preston Automotive there until moving to Edmonton in the mid-70s. He married Linda Shangoose and has 1 child, Pam, and 1 granddaughter, Bernard. Worked for McGregor Light and Power in Edmonton until his retirement in 2005. He currently resides in Stony Plain, Alberta. Louis Vivian worked at the Land Titles Office and moved into Winnipeg to attend school there. He came back still a young man and worked at the King Edward Hotel after his uncle Louis passed away. Later on, he was at the Vivian Motor Hotel. He married Evelyn Curtis in 1947 and had 1 daughter, Lee. Lou served with the 170 Ferry Squadron for the Royal Canadian Air Force. He coached for years from the Bantam Double B Division up to Junior Bs in the 50s and 60s. And if you played hockey in Neepawa in those years, you undoubtedly played for Lou. He also helped further players' education by applying for hockey scholarships for those who qualified. Lou passed away in 2008. Kaz Kasprick went to work for the Neepawa meat market shortly after leaving school and was their delivery boy. He moved into Winnipeg and became a butcher at Shop Easy and then Safeway in the same capacity. Kaz moved from Portage and worked as a butcher and meat cutter for an independent food store. He married Bev and they have 4 girls and 4 grandkids. Kaz retired due to illness around 2011 and passed away just recently in 2016. The last report about Bruce Johnson was that he went to Moosomin, Saskatchewan, where the family opened up a clothing store. I was unable to trace his whereabouts from there. If anyone has information on Bruce, please let me know and I will include it in a future column. Albert Pello left Neepawa after school and went into Winnipeg to work at the Teachers College as a cook. When the college closed, he went to Cranberry Portage and then, after a short spell, went back into Winnipeg to the School for the Deaf until 1967. A friend of Albert's, Harvey Jury, got him on at the City of St. James as a caretaker maintenance man and into the St. James Police Department in 1972, also as a maintenance man. He retired in 2003. Albert married Norma Boyd, and they had 3 children and have 5 grandkids. Norma passed away in 2007. Albert's hobbies include small projects in carpentry, cross-country skiing, gardening, and keeping busy with the grandchildren. Gary Harris sold Watkins products after leaving school and became a distributor for them for 12 years. He married Joan McKirkin in 1964. They lived in Brandon, where Gary sold cars for Canadian Motors. They moved to Neepawa, where he sold feed to the area Hutterite colonies until his health began to fail. Gary passed away in 1999. Chris Jackson, better known as Nipper, left Neepawa to go into the mining industry and mined in northern Ontario and then in Thompson. He worked for the Salvation Army in British Columbia as a cook. Chris was married with 1 child. He passed away circa 2005. Barry Anderson left Neepawa after graduation from NACI and went to Colorado College for a hockey scholarship, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree and a teacher's certificate. Barry started teaching in Carberry and spent his entire career of 32 years there, 29 of those as principal. He retired in 1996. Barry married Marlene McGregor in 1962, and they have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. He enjoys golf and still works in the summer months as a hail adjuster. Don Martin left school to pursue his hockey dreams with the Brandon Wheat Kings, then into Winnipeg to play for the St. Boniface Canadians. When Don returned to Neepawa to work with the mixed farming operation, he spent 20 consecutive years playing for the Neepawa Cubs baseball team, and in the winter played for the Intermediates and the Neepawa Natives. Don married Eleanor Anderson from Melita, and they had 3 children, and he has 3 grandchildren and 2 great-grandkids. He coached various minor hockey teams over the years, including the 1961-62 Bantam ABs to the provincial title. Gary Martin went to Colorado College on a hockey scholarship after graduating from the Neepawa Collegiate. He graduated from there with a BA degree in 1962 and went to Arizona State University, where he graduated with an MA and a PhD in psychology in 1966. Gary went on to teach in St. Paul's College, University of Manitoba. He retired as a regular professor there, where he still teaches on a part-time basis. Gary has written 8 books, mostly on sports psychology. One of his books, Behavior Modification, has been published in as many as 5 languages and used as a psychology textbook for universities in 19 countries. He married Lois McKee, now divorced, and in 1970 married Nikki Brody. He has 5 children, 5 grandchildren. Gary does some walking and continues to revise his books and teach. Gary and Nikki reside in Winnipeg. Art Crabb spent a short stint in the Canadian Army as part of the National Survival Training, referenced to as Snakes and Ladders. In the 1950s, Art joined the Royal Canadian Navy and served on several of Her Majesty's Canadian ships. Art was posted to the training base in Cornwallis, Nova Scotia, and then Art was transferred to the Army as a vehicle technician and was posted to Germany and then to Moose Jaw. In October 1981, Art was killed in a traffic accident near Moose Jaw. Art was an avid curler and participated in many bonspiels, both within and outside of the military. He also loved to play baseball and to play with his two daughters, Terry and Michelle. Michelle died tragically in September 81, just about a month before Art died. Art married Gladys Fedoric of Red Deer, Alberta, who unfortunately died while serving in Germany in the 1980s. And he does have a really clear photograph of the team and all those names that I read. And those are an amazing group of people, and I'm sure that some of them are very familiar to our listeners today. Getting to the classifieds, this week there is a notice of happy birthday to Donald Pat Wahoski, 90th birthday, love, Gertie, and family. And there's also some material. The Tigers, NACI Tigers, stumble as schedule gets tough by, by Owen Devereaux. Neepawa, and in the photograph, Neepawa attempts to move the puck into the Boys of Wayne zone during their game on Wednesday, January 18th. And this is what Owen Devereaux had to write about that game. The past week is likely one of the Neepawa Tiger hockey teams would like to forget, as they dropped 3 straight games. If there is any consolation to the fact to be had, at least it was against 3 of the best teams in the Westman High School Hockey League. Things opened up with the game on Wednesday, January 18th at the Yellowhead Center versus the Boys of Wayne Broncos, who were at 11-3-3. A pair of goals apiece from Justin Patterson and Leighton Holstein helped Boys of Wayne to earn a 7-0 win, along with multiple goals from Patterson and Holstein, Tyson Pringle, Nick Cormier, and Maverick Morrow, who also scored for the visitors. This game was Boys of Wayne's only trip to Neepawa on the WHSHL regular season schedule. The game was quickly followed with a narrow 3-2 loss in Killarney to the Raiders, who sit at 13-2-0. Ryan Kostenchuk and Ben Ranka scored for the Tigers in the contest. The final game of the week for Neepawa was back at the Yellowhead Center on Sunday, January 22nd, versus the top team in the league, the Vincent Massey Vikings, who are sitting at 15-3-1. The game featured a little bit of old-time hockey as there was a few heated exchanges, especially in the second period. These altercations forced several players from both teams to spend extended periods in the penalty box. As for the results on the scoreboard, a 4-goal barrage in the second period helped to lift the Vikings to the 6-4 decision. The Tigers were led by a pair of goals from Tyson Stansky to go with singles from Brennan Weeb and Baron Mitchler. With these recent defeats, Neepawa sits at 7-6-4 with 18 points. They have fallen into a 3-way tie for 6th in the standings with Deloraine and Major Pratt. The Tigers will play a pair of games this week, one in Brandon against the Crocus Plainsmen on Thursday, January 26th. Neepawa will follow up with a home game in the Yellowhead Center on Friday, the 27th against Souris. Start time for this contest is 7:30 p.m. And there's other results from NACI Basketball. On Monday, January 16th, junior varsity basketball, the Neepawa Tigers 68-32 against the McGregor Mustang boys, and a contest between the McGregor Mustangs and the Neepawa Tigers girls left McGregor with 34 and Neepawa with 28. On January 19th, a varsity basketball, Neepawa Tigers 75 versus 71 for the William Morton Warriors and for the boys, and Neepawa Tigers 76-28 for the William Morton Warriors girls. So 3 wins and a loss, unfortunately, for the girls there. We appreciate it when the high schools are able to get us their material as well. There is a lot of sports going on, and it's very difficult to try and cover it all and be there. Photographs from the school would also be appreciated. This week in my Neepawa, we have another lovely photograph. I'll try and get it. The sky that night. On January 17th, Inaka Mac caught this beautiful sunset from the second story of the building It's Time at the corner of Mountain and Hamilton in Neepawa. And readers are encouraged to send in their photographs in high resolution digital to the Neepawa press, and we appreciate that photograph, Inaka. And Neepawa Town Council. News covered by Owen Devereaux. Meeting was January 17th, 2017, and the headline, Council Disappointed with Dutch Elm Deal. Neepawa Town Council has agreed to a new deal on the control of Dutch elm disease. The cost-sharing agreement is with the province and outlines the responsibilities between the two sides. In accordance with the new Community Forest Grant Agreement, the province comes in and marks any diseased trees that it finds. The community is then tasked with the removal of the trees before March 1st, 2018. They're then reimbursed for the cost of the work. The set amount on the deal is $181.32 per tree, plus $2,000 for administration costs. The town of Neepawa, along with several other municipalities, have attempted to get the reimbursement amount increased, citing that it was insufficient amount for the cost of removal. The province has not made any adjustments to the amount. Council expressed disappointment with the decision, indicating that this was akin to a legislated tree deficit. They agreed to the deal, noting that it was still important to get something from the province to cover the costs of this mandated removal. Another topic, new senior housing. A new senior housing project has received approval in Neepawa on Tuesday, January 17th. Town Council agreed to rezone the land at 474 2nd Avenue to allow for the construction of the 4-unit 55-plus residential building. The 1,000 square foot units will be for rent and are being built by the same developers who are currently building the housing complex on the corner of 1st Avenue and Mill Street. Fire report update. The final Neepawa Fire Department report for 2016 was presented to Council. It indicated that there were a total of 70 fire calls made in 2016, down from 88 the previous year. The report also noted that a pair of firemen are participating in a Level 1 fire course. That training course is offered for free through the Office of the Fire Commissioner Mutual Aid District. As well, Council received an equipment update from Fire Chief Scott Gibson. He noted that the prep work for the new fire truck is moving along well and that the firefighters are pleased with the purchase. He also added that preliminary plans are in motion to find a suitable replacement for the grass fire truck. And in the Mayor's report, Mayor DeCroot opened his report with an update on the subdivision of the former CN property. He noted some frustration with delays being dealt with from the province's municipal planning. De Groot said additional housing opportunities are at a critical stage in Neepawa and that the municipality has done everything that's been asked of it to get the process moving ahead. He stated that he feels it's the municipalities who are in the best position to figure out the configuration of lots for future development and requested that the provincial body get moving on approval. De Groot then shifted attention to an update on the transition to a new third-party garbage collection. He acknowledged that the early transition could have been managed better. He also apologized for an error in his public comments on the company and its global outreach. And there's a notice at the bottom of page 8, and it says, share your favorite Disney moment to get free vouchers to attend Disney on Ice. So our people have an opportunity to attend Disney on Ice, which is a passport to adventure this year at the MTS Center in Winnipeg, February 16th to 19th. The vouchers are valid only for February 16th, but you're eligible for a draw if you share your moment by email on your favorite Disney moment, and email those responses for the opportunity to win a pass to news@neepawabanner.com. That would be a rather nice gift to take a grandchild or a favorite person to the ice. And there was 2 pages. We'll read part of the opinion page of the letter from Aaron Woodrick of CTF Federal Director, that's Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and the letter begins with a title is Ottawa Planning Tax Hikes by Stealth. In last year's federal budget, Finance Minister Bill Morneau announced that the Liberal government would embark on a review of federal tax credits. Many groups, including the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, voiced their support. It's not hard to see why. Canada's tax code is a beast. The Income Tax Act alone is 3,314 pages long. Simplification is a good idea. Canada's tax code is festooned with all kinds of special carve-outs and credits which make it frustratingly complex, inefficient, and nearly impossible for a regular citizen to file their own taxes. And while the Liberals have already eliminated certain Harper-era tax credits, such as the Children's Fitness and Arts credits, they have also introduced some of their own, including a school supplies credit for teachers. Much work remains to be done. Unfortunately, there are worrying signs that Minister Morneau's real intent is to use simplification as a political cover to hike taxes by stealth for millions of Canadians. Among the biggest proposals being floated are changes to make Canadians pay taxes on the value of employer-provided health and dental plans. Currently, they are non-taxable benefits. The policy reasoning behind this is clear. On the employee side, they're not actually getting paid cash, so it's not really income. And on the employer side, by making these benefits non-taxable, employers have extra incentive to provide them, as they don't require additional Canadian pension plan and employment insurance and contributions. All of this results in more Canadians having health and dental benefits through their employer. On this front, the policy seems to be achieving its objective. According to the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, in 1990, only 50% of employed Canadians had employer-provided health benefits. By 2015, this had risen to 75%. Perhaps the best argument for change in how health and dental insurance are treated is one of fairness. Under the current system, those who receive these benefits from employers get a break, while those who don't receive them employers and must purchase them out of pocket do not. The solution the government proposes should be to make all such benefits taxable in exchange for introducing partial tax credits available to all Canadians. There are at least two big problems with this proposal. First, it would still mean a tax hike for millions of Canadians, including those of limited means. Second, it would likely result in fewer Canadians having supplementary health benefits, as some employers would drop their plans and those affected are either unwilling or unable to then purchase their own. It is hard to see how either of these are desirable outcomes. While identifying a legitimate inequity, the government has overlooked the fact there is more than one way to level the playing field. Rather than forcing everyone to pay tax on these benefits, the government could simply introduce a new tax credit or expand an existing one for those purchasing health insurance out of pocket. One possibility is the medical expenses tax credit, which gives a credit to Canadians with hefty medical bills, lowering the credit threshold. Currently, Canadians can only claim a credit if they spend over $2,237 on medical expenses. It would provide additional relief for those buying their own health insurance. The catch, of course, is that such a move would reduce the amount of tax paid to the government. If you're a money-hungry politician, this is framed as a bad thing. A cynic might even argue that it suggests the government's commitments to policy fairness is a lesser concern than its fear of loosening its grip on Canadians' wallets. Accordingly, Minister Morneau should tread carefully. Simplification of the tax code is a good goal for the government, but it is not the only goal. Above all, the government should not exploit simplification as a convenient pretext to sneak in tax hikes on millions of Canadians. Aaron Woodrick, CTF Federal Director. And from Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Manitoba first out of the gate to control red tape. On January 23rd, the CFIB issued a red tape challenge to provincial and territorial governments to follow the example set federally and legislate a one-for-one law. CFIB commends Manitoba for becoming the first province to accept the challenge and commit to legislate a one-for-one law. At a media event today with the Honourable Deputy Premier Heather Stephenson, the Manitoba government announced it would introduce legislation that would require at least one regulation be repealed for every new regulation introduced. The Manitoba government committed to legislate a cap on regulatory requirements through a one-for-one rule as part of its regulatory accountability legislation. For each new requirement implemented, one that creates an equivalent burden on stakeholders must be removed. A stricter version of the rule, a two-for-one policy, will be implemented until 2021. The CFIB has been a leading force in red tape awareness across Canada for over a decade. The annual costs of all regulations on businesses in Canada is pegged at $37 billion per year, with close to one-third, $11 billion of that unnecessary red tape, according to a 2015 CFIB report. I see by the clock I have very little time left to share. Looking back over the years is the only page that really hasn't been dealt with, but if you can have the opportunity to pick up a copy of the paper, you can maybe read it in more detail. Thank you for listening and watching. NACTV reads the news, Neepawa Press, January 25th. And remember, you can always contribute if you feel that this is a worthwhile service to our community and that you really enjoy. Any small contribution is greatly appreciated. And Nikki is here at the office Monday through Thursday, 9 till 4. And any little bit of contribution is greatly appreciated. We're also looking for more volunteers to do things like I am doing today, reading the news. There's camera work can be done. We're very fortunate working with NACI. We will have our first student starting on her training as in working on editing, and we're quite excited to have a young lady come from NACI and be part of the work training program. And we look forward to more partnership with our schools and in our community. And we thank you for all contributions you've given over the past, but going forward, we would appreciate even more help. And we just thank you for tuning in and listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.